We're going to focus specifically on non-combat related PTSD. And you may think, you might be one of those people that you think if you haven't experienced combat, then you don't have PTSD. And you can say that all day, but you're wrong. Like in every aspect, you are just incorrect. In fact, some veterans who experience combat and who are rated for PTSD, not all the time is their PTSD rating stemming from their time in combat. I'll give you an example. A personal friend that I have, they've experienced combat and a lot of it. And his stressor-related disorder, diagnosis is something we'll cover here in a second, stems from not his time in Afghanistan, okay? It stemmed from when they came home. There was a ceremony for a Marine who was killed in action. They were close, and the Marine's mom during the ceremony was crying, and not just your ugly cry, right? It was a very deep, wailing, very deep, motherly type of cry, and you could just imagine what that sounds like. In that moment, for my friend, everything about that moment, the way the sounds, the setting, the lighting, the way he can describe everything about that moment perfectly, and it still haunts him today. So even though he experienced combat, his stressor-related disorder doesn't actually stem from combat. So that's a long way of me saying not everyone who experiences combat has PTSD. Definitely more likely for sure, but combat-related PTSD is a whole separate video. They're actually a lot easier in my opinion. Non-combat-related PTSD is, I would argue, a more difficult claim, right? So people experience PTSD from being in car accidents, right? Personal trauma is a big one. Sexual trauma, you get the point. It's not all just combat related. So here we go. Here's non-combat related PTSD. And if you're wondering where we're going to be diving into, okay? If you want to know about PTSD, all forms of it, combat, personal trauma, sexual trauma, non-combat related, whatever, right here, go ahead, give that a gander, give that a read. We're going to be flipping between two of these, specifically for non-combat. There's a ton of information on this. I'm going to give you the meat. All right, so first we have right here, D2A, determining the occurrence of stressors, and that's what I'm going to stress here, pun intended, because it's like every other claim. All right, you have to have evidence in service. Now, the in-service event for PTSD changes in a sense to stressors, and the VA tells us exactly what we're looking for. I'm going to show you that next, but let's go ahead and take this look. Okay, when determining the occurrence, this is M21. Okay, so this is for processors, raters. Determining the occurrence of stressors, established service connection for PTSD. Consider the following. PTSD does not need to have its onset as a result of combat. There you go. The trauma may be experienced alone, like cases of rape and assault. I don't want YouTube to burn me. Or in the company of groups, people, military combat. Okay. Do not limit a stressor to just one single episode. Could be a group. PTSD can be caused by events that occur before, during, or after service. That's key there. PTSD can develop hours, months, or years after a stressor. That's also key there. Okay, the most important thing here is this little note right here. That's really what we're going to focus on. The relationship between stressors during military service, because it's direct, and current symptoms, problems will govern the question of service connection, meaning you have to have evidence in service, not necessarily a diagnosis. Okay, we just read that, but the event where your symptoms and your diagnosis, your problems does stem from, it has to stem from that event, and the symptoms have to be linked or aligned with that event in some way, shape, or form. So it's very much like the theory direct theory service connection. Just a little different because we see this word here, stressors. Now, before we go into stressors, and that's what's next, I want to talk about PTSD, the diagnosis. Don't get wrapped up in, I want to claim PTSD, okay? You can submit the claim. The VA might call it stressor-related disorder, unspecified stressor-related disorder. It might end up being, anxiety, major depressive disorder. It could be a ton of things, okay? PTSD for VA claims almost has its own process when it comes to stressors, and so they're much easier in my opinion, especially combat-related, fear-based. That's its own video. Honestly, it's fairly easy. Okay, if you have the stressor evidence to back it up, and that's what matters, is the evidence of the stressor. Okay, so here we have definition of stressor, and then we're going to go down and show you a list of where stressors can come from an evidentiary perspective. All right. A PTSD stressor is a traumatic event or series of events in which an individual has been personally or indirectly exposed to actual or threatened death, serious injury, or sexual violence. Okay. My friend that I know who was attending the ceremony and heard his mother cry, his VA rating, although he has combat experience, his diagnosis, his symptoms, everything that's directly related to military service, that is unspecified trauma disorder. That's what it is. Unspecified trauma disorder. So don't get wrapped up into, the VA changed my diagnosis. It's okay. It's okay. We see here PTSD specifically is being actual or threatened with death, serious injury, or sexual violence. My friend in the ceremony, who's just listening to this mother cry and just experiencing that moment, and there's a billion little things that go into that, right? He did not experience death in that situation, serious injury, or sexual violence. And so his diagnosis is unspecified trauma related disorder, not PTSD. So don't get wrapped up into, I gotta claim PTSD. I gotta claim PTSD. It's gotta be PTSD. Okay. Relax. Your evidence, your symptoms will speak for itself. Okay. That's a big part there. All right. Claims processor needs to identify which stressor type a veteran claim falls under so that the proper development will occur. Whenever I say fear-based or combat-related PTSD claims are easier, that's why, again, separate video topic there. Claims can be based on stress related to an in-service PTSD diagnosis. Hello, winner, winner, chicken dinner. Okay. Personal assault, that sucks. Combat or former prisoner of war, obviously. Fear, that's the easiest one. A stressful event unrelated to hostile military or terrorist activity. This is non-combat. When people say non-combat related PTSD, they're probably talking about this, unless it's like you were assaulted, right? But again, remember, if you want to know about PTSD, this list right here is covered in all of this. So whichever one you are, this is non-combat, okay? You can dive into that. Okay, anyways. Notes, PTSD has the same claim elements regardless of type of stressor. The distinction between the different types of PTSD claims is based on how the stressor is verified or conceded. Veterans will not generally know what category their stressor falls into. That's not common knowledge, okay? What evidence is needed to support it. Veterans do not know what evidence is needed to support it. So it is incumbent of the claims processor to make that determination, considering that some stressor types have a lower evidentiary threshold than others. Some are easier than others, okay? We're not going to read this whole thing. I'm going to end this. So there's stressor verification. That's key there. Examples of sources for stressor verification. And here we go, okay? Stressor verification information can often be found in the veteran service records or other official documents. The list below, although not all-inclusive, provides examples of the types of official service records that may be useful in stressor verification. That part is key. If your stressor is not conceded, gone. Okay? Gone. Your stressor needs to be conceded in service. Your symptoms need to align, need to reach back to that specific stressor or group of events. Okay. So for instance, if you had, stressor A in service, and then after service, something really traumatic happened to you 10 years later, and then 10 years later, you have PTSD, and all your PTSD symptoms are going to this stressor that happened in out of service and had nothing to do over here. That's a difficult claim to prove, okay? Evidence matters. So service personnel records and pay records, especially if you're receiving like hazard pay, jump pay, okay? Military occupation evidence, hazard pay records, STRs, military performance reports. I've helped many veterans. The Marine Corps has fit reps, annual fit reps, at least annual. I've had many veterans use fit reps to support their stressor-related claims. Verification that the veteran received combat. Okay, obviously that's duh. Unit or organizational histories, that's a big one there. Daily staff journals, operational reports, lessons learned, absolutely. AARs, radio logs, deck logs, ship histories, muster rolls, command chronologies and war diaries, monthly summaries, and morning reports. So if someone was there yesterday, they unalive themselves, they're not there the next day, that's a big one, okay? And you can see buddy statements. I mean, there's just so much to cover here. I can't cover it all in one video. But the main part is this. Your mental health condition, whether it's PTSD or unspecified trauma-related disorder, anxiety, depression, whatever, your evidence, your diagnosis, your symptoms need to link to your evidence from service. And for PTSD specifically, it's got to be the stressor. So in some ways, if your evidence for your stressor is really strong and evident, it's clear. I'm not saying you have a home run claim, but it's there, okay? It's ready, it's prime, it's good to go. Versus you have I'm going to say rumor mill. Your stressor can't be verified and conceded. Your claim is dead in the water. It's a really bad pun. Not intended. Anyways, that's all I have. I hope that helps. Okay. There's so much more to this. Everyone's specific situation is really going to play big factors in how you navigate a non-combat related PTSD claim. If you made it to the end, thank you very much. Appreciate it.